Brent Beaird of College Sports Today and First Coast News joins us now on the Peterbrook Chocolatier studio line. Brent, a good Tuesday morning to you, sir.
Good to be with you, my friend, as always. Cooling off here today. We're glad for that, but some basketball is about to get heated up in the next few days. ACC starts today, amazingly, SEC on the horizon, so it's a great time of year.
And the end of an era as it relates to the ACC tournament, I guess, Brent, in that Raycom Sports set to televise its last regular season and just basketball in general, football in general. I mean, you and I grew up with Raycom. The old bowl game telecast, the Blue Bonnet Bowl, things like that. It's hard to imagine college sports without Raycom.
Yeah. Listen, there's no doubt about that. I remember being in SEC media days. Trev, you remember Jimmy Rayburn, who was one of the producers for Raycom, and I would talk to him a little bit about it. Then I would say something to the effect of, "What about having those at that point 12:26 Eastern time starts in September?" He would say, "Well, it's just not that hot." So I'm not sure what planet he was on sometimes, but yes, I'm sad to see the end of that era, brother.
Raycom goes back a good ways for older folks like Brent and myself. Hey, speaking of television in college sports, Urban Meyer has been hired by Fox to serve as an analyst. A couple of things on Urban. First, in his first go-around on television between the Florida and Ohio State stints, did you think Urban was all that good on television? And now, with everything that's gone down in the last year or so, the scandal at Ohio State, do you think he'll be well received in this second stint, Brent?
Trav, I'll be honest with you. I don't get this in a lot of ways. I mean, sure, you want to make a splash with Urban, but is Urban going to be honest about his brethren and be critical of them at times when he needs to be able to do that? Because if he wants to get back in, as we probably think he does in the next 2 or 3 years, or is he going to be pretty calm and good-natured about anything he says about his colleagues? Yeah. So I think that's one thing. The other thing is, Trev, I'll be honest with you, I think it's a terrible lineup. I get the point that you got Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart and Brady Quinn, and they were all former players that had great careers. But if they wanted to do something, get Tim Brando or Tony Barnhart or Clay Travis or Gus Johnson or somebody on there who knows something. Frankly, going up against ESPN, and look, people can be critical of ESPN at times, and I get that, but they do what they do for game day, and I know there's more fluff in it now. They do as well as anybody who's ever done it. I'm frankly, Trav, I'm just not impressed with this lineup at all.
Yeah, they've tried Clay Travis before on the cable, and that didn't go so well. So I'm not sure if there is a good direction. Obviously, I think they're playing to their ties with the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, and you can pretty much span every fan base, every conference in a lot of instances outside the SEC with Brady Quinn and his association with Notre Dame, but. The concern for me with Urban is just credibility in general. Yeah. Given the events of the last year. And I think you hit on something too, with his likelihood of going back into coaching at some point down the road. He's going to coach speak us to death, man. In a way it's going to be boring. I don't think he was great before all of this. I don't think he was great the first time around. And he certainly lost credibility in the eyes of a lot of people when he picked Notre Dame to beat Alabama in the 2013 BCS championship game. But in terms of name recognition, I get it. But in terms of credibility and really having an interest in anything he has to say, I'm at the bottom of that sort of totem pole right now with Urban. Hey, we see some college football win totals, Brent, have already been released. Alabama sits at 11. Clemson sits at 11. Georgia at 10.5, that rusty hook. Oklahoma at 10.5. Give me a team or two that you think, at this point anyway in the offseason, would be a good bet to go over their early line for a total, an over-under for the 2019 season.
Well, that's a great question. I mean, Trav, would LSU be one of those? I mean, with Brady coming in with that passing game from the Saints, I mean, could he do more for Joe Burrow than maybe we think than he could? Or if Gus, or at least someone on that assistant coaching staff, could develop a quarterback, whether it be Bo Nix or whoever it might be, I mean, could they be a game over kind of what they're looking at? Although I think that brutal schedule is going to take care of that. And then there's a lot of talk down here right now about could with Hornibrook coming in at FSU. Well, I don't think he's going to be the starter. If they're able to get anything done with that offensive line, could that group be a little bit better? So maybe some of those teams that kind of made me think a little bit about that with 2 or 3 tweaks that they can win maybe a few more games than people think they could.
Yeah, LSU's win total early is 9, and Auburn's is 8. And both those teams, I think you're going to be able to determine whether or not they go over those with those early season games. Auburn with Oregon right out the chute, LSU in week 2 at Texas. I think those are the games, even more so than what happens in SEC play, that are going to determine whether or not LSU goes over the 9, Auburn goes over the 8. Let me ask you this about Auburn. If Auburn pushes on the number at 8, is that enough for Gus Malzahn to be back in 2020?
I think with some of these folks, Travis, and especially the big money guys, I think he's probably got to win the division in order to be back. I just don't think they're going to settle for another 8-5. Do you? I mean, that's all they've been over the last few years, and when you look at that, that's basically what he's averaged in the last 2 or 3, 4 years. And according to a lot of Auburn people, that's just being a mediocre football team. And you know who they're comparing them against? Their cousins in Tuscaloosa. So no, I don't think that's going to be enough for them at all, frankly.
Brent, we pretty much have spring football underway at most places, I guess, in the SEC. Florida, I believe, starting today. Is that correct?
Today. That's right, yes.
The Gators under Dan Mullen, year 2, headed back to the practice field. But based on what we've seen so far in the Southeastern Conference, what would you say is the top storyline or 2 to this point in spring ball around the league?
I would say Arkansas in year 2 with Chad Morris having maybe the quarterbacks at some point that he wants, and even beyond that, I think the running game is stepping up. I'm still not sure they're where they need to be with John Chavis in their defense right now. We hear Garantano is doing pretty well at Tennessee at quarterback and has improved a lot. So I think that might be something to look at. Now, Ole Miss has started, but I mean they've been kind of vanilla in what's coming out there with what Rich Rod's done. But I know they're glad he's there, and I'm hearing kind of behind the scenes there's some quiet optimism at this point with that they could be much better. I still don't think Ole Miss can be very good until they can do something to fix that defense. So just off the top of my head, I would say that's kind of 3 that's got our attention.
Day 1 of Alabama spring drills in the books. The Crimson Tide practiced in shorts and helmets last Friday. What was your biggest takeaway from the news coming out of Tuscaloosa on Friday?
Probably the linebacker depth again is nowhere near where it needs to be, and that's got to and obviously that's got to improve. That's going to be a real concern. But I think the biggest thing coming from Nick Saban was that we're going back to playing Alabama football. We certainly raised an eyebrow for me that lets you know that he is still probably having nightmares about that Clemson game, and he's not going to let that go. And good for him, because that's who he is. So those two things caught my attention immediately.
Yeah, if you're an Alabama fan, that's exactly what you wanted to hear from a 67-year-old Nick Saban, who amazingly, we still hear more about the imminent retirement of Nick Saban at 67. I'm watching Duke and Carolina Saturday night. Mike Krzyzewski's 72 years old, Brent.
That's right.
And no one talks about K retiring. You know, guy's had health problems, everything else. He's 72. He's 5 years older than Nick Saban. But who do we hear more retirement talk about, Brent? And why is that, you think?
Yeah, well, Trev, I think that's wishful thinking more than it is anything else. It is a lot of what that's about. And listen, his counterpart on the court, Roy Williams, is not slowing down much either, even with the vertigo and all that goes on there. Boy, that's a great point about Kay. And I mean, listen, Kay right now, Travis, got as much energy as you and I do, and so does Saban. So, no, I think that's all that is. That's just okay. He's in his late 60s. When is this going to end? Well, the reality is it's not going to end anytime soon, because he's not retiring anytime soon.
You know what keeps coaches energized well into their 60s and into their 70s, Brent? Number one, recruiting classes.
That's right.
It has just an amazing effect on 60-something, 70-something-year-old head coaches. As long as you keep signing the Zion Williams and Williamsons and the Tua Tagovailoas, boy, the energy level, it's amazing how long you can sustain that well into your golden years. Hey, Brent, we need to talk to you about some SEC basketball coming up, a big week in Nashville. I mean, when you think about what Friday night in Nashville will be like, when you have Kentucky playing in the 6 Central game and Tennessee right after that in the 8 o'clock game, that's just quarterfinals too, Brent. The possibility for a matchup between those two on Saturday in the semifinals. I said it yesterday in talking with Jerry Meyer of 247sports.com. And I'm a long-time self-professed ACC basketball snob, but I'm far more interested in watching this SEC tournament than I am the ACC this time around. Incredible.
And Trav, how's LSU going to respond in this Will Wade situation, cutting down the nets after winning the SEC regular season title, booing Joe Oliva lustily as they did in that ball game, and then on top of that, you've got the two Mississippi teams. You've got an Auburn team, and these bubble teams that frankly are good enough to pull an upset or two. I don't think there's any doubt about it. It's as intriguing a tournament for the league as we've had in a long time.
Yeah, got to be the toughest ticket that tournament is going to have had in a long time. And I love it in Nashville. That just takes it to another level. You could have this same lineup and you put it in St. Louis again this year and it loses a ton. But again, that venue, that location in Nashville with Tennessee and Kentucky being legitimate Final Four contenders, it's going to be through the roof with excitement coming up later in the week up in the Music City. Hey, Brent, you talk about the possibility of some upsets. Do you have Alabama as one of those teams that might be able to pull off one or two, given how poorly the Crimson Tide has played once again down the stretch?
No, I just don't see it as evidence of the last 2 weeks. I frankly don't. I don't think they've got it in them. That they basically gave up at Arkansas. Gafford's was too physical for them. This is a team that's frankly as soft as cotton candy right now, and they're not going to put out any more than probably 20 minutes or 25 of real effort in order to do what they need to be able to do. the real shame of this team is it's one of the most disappointing teams in Alabama history. They've got the talent. They should have won anywhere from 20 to 25 games, but they're stuck on 17. And Trav, I think Ole Miss, it'll be close for a while. They'll make a little bit of an effort, but Ole Miss is too physical for them. And frankly, Kermit Davis, who, by the way, is the SEC Coach of the Year in a lot of people's minds and deserves it, they need this win too. So I don't see anything that this Alabama team has done over the last 2 and 3 weeks to make anybody think that they could make a run in the SEC tournament.
Brent Beaird doesn't see a Texas A&M Auburn two-step coming from Alabama,
no,
a la last year in St. Louis. Hey, Brent, we know you got to run. As always, we appreciate the time, my friend. We'll do it again next week.
Always, my friend. Take care of Trav. Thanks.